Good afternoon, Fabio Ronetti for Winston Capital Advisors, and we're going to cover the week of November 5th through the 9th. We're going to talk about oil, Goldman Sachs, Amazon new headquarters announcement, just some celebrations of the end of the Great War. Then we're going to talk about some of the markets and emerging markets, and finally what happened with the elections and what do we think are the effects of the election results. Let's start with the oil. Finally, we touch a bear market in oil, a 20% correction on the oil, which have prompted some comments just now that the OPEC wants to get together next month and cut some of the production, getting to quotas to decide how they're going to face 2019. Russia have said that if they don't agree with Saudis, they're going to do on their own a cut of 300,000 barrels a day. So we'll see how the thing is. I think the market was taken by surprise that although the Iran sanctions kicked in, there were too many exceptions, especially for big buyers like China, India, Korea, and Japan, things like that. So that somehow took the market by surprise of taking less supply than expected, and now the big producers are trying to see how they curtail production to get into a sort of a better result. So that's on one side. Let's talk about number two is Goldman Sachs. We discussed it briefly, during the week. This scandal with this Malaysia fund and the Abu Dhabi sovereign wealth fund. Goldman Sachs made $600 million in fees. Some people have gone to jail. Some senior Goldman Sachs bankers, chairmen in Asia and all that, have declared themselves guilty. And over the weekend, clearly it's coming out that Lloyd Blankfein, the then CEO and chairman of the company, was present at some of these meetings, and they did something despite the recommendation of the compliance department, etc. So just let's put it on the radar. If you have some white hair like I do, you might remember that was the demise of Salomon Brothers when they cheated or they rigged in a treasury auction. That was the same story with Kidder Peabody. They got a scandal, an accounting scandal in the company. So these things are very sensitive for these financial companies. So again, I'm not saying anything, but just have it in your radar, because as we've been saying, a business of this size, commissions of this size, usually are reviewed at the highest level of the company. And now it's coming out that this was a serious cases of money laundering, and allegedly they stole like $1 billion from the fund. So let's see what happens. So Amazon announced the second headquarters is going to be split among two cities, outside of Manhattan, Long Island City, and outside of DC, Crystal City. And the main reason apparently is that they need to hire 50,000 people, and they couldn't find a city big enough to support that hiring, the logistics, and everything needed for them. So they're going to do two headquarters with 25,000 each, plus all the secondary employment that this will generate. And on top of that, Google for New York announced that they're going to hire 12,000 people, and they're going to buy or rent 1.2 million square feet. So clearly, the tech sector is doing very well on that side. We had the end of big celebrations for the end of the Great War. All the big leaders in Europe were there. There were no special announcements. I was thinking maybe we had something that we, in terms of the macro, or, was Merkel, Macron, Putin, Trump there. But was no more than a big celebration. I remember the Great War, as it is called, for the Western powers was more deadly than the World War II, especially, countries like France and England, they lost about 1 million people each, Italy the same. And then in World War II, although the war overall was way more deadly for the big powers of Western Europe, it was less so. So that the markets had a roller coaster week and basically ended up a little bit higher. The Dow 0.67% and the Nasdaq 0.2%, the rest of Europe 0.3%, 0.4%. The ones that keep suffering is emerging markets. They're down 14% for the year. Not much last week in line. But one of the markets that we like was Mexico, and we were bullish, and we kind of gave up about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's now down 13% for the year. It was kind of flat to up. And then we have this cancellation of the airport that didn't suit well to the investors. And then secondly, President-elect AMLO talking about some fees that the banks charge. So clearly, a very difficult environment for emerging markets, very difficult environment for the markets. So, our view is like take some chips off the table. Cash is at 2% in dollars, which has the biggest rate paying, and put it there for now. Stick with the winners, stick with the stuff that you really have conviction that you like. In our case, are the leading technology companies in America. But just slowly take some chips off the table. The environment is very volatile and it's very difficult to have a good reading and then to have patience when things don't go so well. And finally, the biggest news of the week was clearly the midterm elections, historical record of participation in the United States, and basically, more or less as expected, the Republican Party lost the majority in the House of Representatives, but they keep the Senate. It's very interesting that in modern times, it was the least amount of losses for any incumbent president. They only lost 26 in the House of Representatives, gain in the Senate, gain in governorships. But funny, I say it's funny because President Trump did not mention that he was the smallest lose or loss. But anyway, so it was kind of as expected. We're going to work probably this week and try some of the sectors that are winners. One is the healthcare sector was clearly a winner last week because, Obamacare will stay, so the incumbents are okay. The defense sector is another winner because, defense is one of the few places that there is bipartisan support to keep it. So that will be one of the things that, President Trump will get forward. Probably the Mexico wall is dead. Immigration deals, very unlikely. New tax cuts, very, very unlikely. So we'll see what happens. It's early to tell, but the elections for the first time were more or less as expected. I will be traveling around Europe the next week, and then we'll be back. But we will be reporting daily from all our locations. So remember, for our subscribers, every day at 9:45 a.m. And for everybody else, you can see more details in our webpage, winston.capital, and in our YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Have a great week.